Welcome back to OurTribe, the podcast. I'm Tuvia Kopstein, and this is the podcast, the Jewish professional podcast with the Emunah angle. What's Emunah? Emunah is belief in God. How does it inform your professional life? In this episode, we are going to meet Mordechai Danielov in Jerusalem. Mordechai is the CEO and chief everything of BitWise, which is a company that services chief technology officers and helps them communicate their data to whoever needs to know what their data is saying. In this episode, Mordechai will talk about his Jewish journey, of course, for about the first half of the podcast, and the last half of the podcast is talking about his professional journey. Really, it's always one and the same story when it comes to OurTribe, the podcast, and we know that you'll enjoy it. Now, OurTribe, the podcast is powered by the Podcast Fellowship, podcastfellowship.org, which is an amazing nonprofit, educational nonprofit that helps Jewish young adults and college students encounter the Judaism, understand it from the sources, while earning a generous stipend in the process. Check it out, podcastfellowship.org. And without further ado, OurTribe, the podcast with Mordechai Danielov. Let's take it away.
Welcome to OurTribe, the podcast that sits down with Jewish professionals and entrepreneurs to hear their stories, share their advice, and bare their Jewish souls.
Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, Mordechai. How are you?
Good, thank you. Good evening, probably. It's 7 p.m. local time.
7 p.m. Are you in Jerusalem?
Yes, sir. In Har Nof, Jerusalem.
Excellent. Wonderful. Yeah. Okay, Mordechai, tell us your story. Take us back to the beginning.
It's I'm about to celebrate my 50th story, so it's a long story.
50th story?
50th birthday.
Birthday.
Yes, a story. Yeah. Probably going to start somewhere at an arbitrary start point, growing up in Queens. Okay, so I arrived in Queens from the Soviet Union at the age of about 16, give or take.
Where in the Soviet Union?
In Georgia, the country, not the state. Yeah. And 90 some odd % of people growing up there were intensely secular. I mean, we didn't even know there was such thing as secular. I mean, we were just thought that was normal, So, sure. So I went to a regular high school, and then I went to college, whatever. And from my perspective, when I would go visit people like in Brooklyn or Main Street, for those that know Queens, that's a little bit more observant area of Queens. I didn't see anything special, really. Like if you asked me, are you thinking about keeping Torah and Mitzvot? I'd be like, oh, why? So what do you see in that? Really, it was just, for me, it was very gray and unattractive. So when I started to wonder about spirituality, Judaism was really the last thing I checked out. And really out of exasperation, because I checked out just about everything else. Really, I sort of did like a East Road journey, really spending an enormous amount of time and effort and probably money along the way exploring.
For those who don't know, Mordechai is referring to Yisro, who was the father-in-law of Moses, and we learned that he was called the priest of Midian, which means he really had tried all of the different types of idol worship and found no meaning in any of them. And then he finally heard about the Jews and how God was taking special care of the Jews, and he was very interested in that and became a very famous convert to Judaism. So you're saying you had a similar path. So
something like that, because look, I started out with exploring Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, in all of its variations, the Chinese, the Japanese version, even the Icelandic religions, Native American, of course, shamanism, you just name it. I mean, like, just really, there was not, the European paganism, pre-Christianity, Zoroastrianism, just everything under the sun. And it was just a very frustrating experience because I'm a very logical person. That's probably why I tended towards the working in databases, and I kind of did like analysis. Like, okay, so your claims are this, so let's check. How is it that your followers are sticking to these claims? Are these claims transferable? First of all, are they good in of themselves? Second of all, are they actually applicable to the reality? And finally, and that's really the test that unfortunately is the hardest, is how teachable are these concepts? I mean, like, can you actually get someone to buy into that concept en masse? Like everyone has like good ideas, but really it's very difficult to get people to buy into them en masse, And so out of sheer exasperation, I started learning Chumash.
Can I pause for a moment? Did you speak to adherents of each of these religions and ask them this series of questions?
Of course, I went and visited their temples. I spoke to their priests. I read their books. I did the research. I'm a researcher at heart. Even though I'm a college dropout, but I've been doing research all my life. In fact, even now, I don't just work with databases. I research the foundations of the database theory, and I work with some of the more advanced researchers in the field to apply them in practice and stuff. It's just something for me, second nature, really. Probably because my father is a scientist, and I grew up in a laboratory around people doing research. So, for me, it's like second nature, to research things. Got it.
Okay, so you were traveling around the world, reading up on all these religions, reading their books, speaking to the devout.
Uh-huh. Yeah, speaking to them, hanging out with them, spending time, absorbing the vibes, whatever. But always I came out very disappointed because everything was very nice, but until, it came for a reality test. Sort of like, who was that famous rabbi with the cat and the mouse?
The Rambam.
No, not Rambam. It was a more modern rabbi. Not modern, but like it was a European rabbi that a priest bet him that he can train a cat.
They say it about the Rambam. I don't know. I don't know anybody else. Yeah.
I heard about somebody else. All right, man. But anyway, so it was sort of like that, right? So it's like everything's nice in theory until the the little box opens and then the mouse jumps out, and then there you go. Everything goes. So make the long story short, I was getting very frustrated. I said, well, you know what? Judaism, as unattractive as it seems, can be worse than this, right? So let's just check it out, So I started learning, and it wasn't my main initiative either. A few of my friends were doing, getting into tshuva, but at around the same time, we're going to shiurim, and they were starting to talk about the Chumash and this and that. So I was like, all right, fine. I've read the English version, but I said to myself, probably it's a mess. So, but let me just check out the original. So I tried to learn the Art Scroll Chumash. So thank you, Art Scroll, for a terrible translation. But it was so terrible that I had to learn Hebrew.
Translations are by necessity. They have to, especially when it comes to Torah. There's a lot to say about translations and how you're taking a language that really is a timeless expression of prophecy and trying to dumb it down into something that we can understand. A lot is missing. It's a very difficult task.
I say that, with the full understanding of the difficult task that was before them, but nonetheless, it was a terrible experience reading it. But what it did do for me was opened a thirst for more thorough investigation. So I found Me'am Loez. I said, well, 20 volumes on 5 books. That should cover a little bit, right?
Okay. So you're talking about a Medrash. It's a Medrash anthology, correct?
No,
Me'am
Loez is a compilation of Pirushim from 18th century. It started out in Turkey by a rabbi called Rabbi Yaakov Culi. He has, on every pasuk, or whatever applicable, he has the halacha, he has mitzvot, he has Midrashim, and some, pshat questions that all the difficult questions that you wanted to ask about the Chumash, he has them, So that was so fascinating that I actually took off from work for 9 months to read it.
Wow. To read all 20 volumes.
Yeah, and so amazing. I just read it 3 times in a row because if you just read it once, it won't sink in. So you need to read it at least 3 times and take notes, whatever.
Did you go from 1 to 20 and then again 1 to 20, or you did 1 and then 1?
No, 1 to 20 3 times. Okay. Yeah, because you need the time to forget. Because otherwise, it doesn't count. And I mean, you need to go to 20 and forget what was in 1. And then come back and come back, because by the time I was reading Me'am Loez, I was already very into learning techniques. Okay, and that's a lot of what helped me out navigate the sea of Jewish learning, because you can imagine it's not imagine, but you know yourself how much we need to learn, and unfortunately how little of that average person gets to cover in their lifetime. And so but when when I read Me'am Loez, I was so excited that I was like, I'm never going to put this down. Because every single question that I had in every single other religion somehow found an answer in there. You know what I mean? It was just uncanny. It was something unbelievable.
Wow.
Every single problem that mankind has ever struggled with has a black and white answer in that compilation. It's just amazing, So the rest kind of was history as far as the my Jewish learning, because I quickly decided I absolutely have to learn Hebrew, which I did, and in fact eventually moved to Israel to facilitate that. Even though in Israel they speak what I call funny Hebrew, but at least it's closer than English, and there are so many more Talmidei Chochamim here.
I think just to explain it for the audience. And there's a few things that you said that I also I let them slide, but just to explain, you're saying the Me'am Loez talks about halacha. That means that it's taking from the actual verses of the Torah what is to be done practically, how to actually live the commandment or whatever it was, whatever can be taken out of the stories, right? And it had Medrash, which really goes into for a deeper understanding of the words and the phrases and how they deal with each other. And then you said also questions, difficult questions. Okay, that we can understand. But now you're saying, well, can you explain what do you mean? What do you mean when you say that you learned Hebrew and you went to Israel to facilitate understanding of Hebrew, but in Israel they're speaking a different Hebrew? Can you explain that?
It all comes from experience, right? So by the time I was learning, so Hebrew was my 1 second, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 language.
What were the first 5?
Georgian, Russian, Italian, English, and Spanish. In that order. So I had some experience learning languages, but once you get a hang of it, kind of you kind of know what the routine is. I mean, if you want to know the language, this is what you do: A, B, C, and off you go. So one of the steps is immersion in the language. There's
Right.
absolutely nothing you can do about that. Now, Lashon HaKodesh is a strange, outstanding, outlier, I guess in that case, because there's no community that actually speaks Lashon HaKodesh fully.
Mm-hmm.
But I figured Hebrew, or as I call it, funny Hebrew, was close enough. So that's why but it wasn't. I didn't move solely because I wanted to practice Hebrew, but also because the level of learning here is much better, and just the number of Talmidei Chochamim that is available that for a casual conversation is just something unbelievable. I can walk into a shul and ask someone the most difficult question in a most difficult sugya, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, so this is," and like on the spot, we'll expound it for me. So this can't buy that.
Did you know you were going to have that when you came?
Yeah, that's
did.
one of the biggest reasons I came, because after I finished Me'amloes, I'm obviously compressing some timelines there, but I went to learn in yeshiva in Yerushalayim. Dvar Yerushalayim is called, and so I did have exposure to some of the Talmidei Chochamim that lived in Har Nof. So, in fact, when I wanted to move to Israel, I dafka wanted to move to Har Nof to be close to yeshiva, because I didn't want to waste time on finding a new yeshiva and whatever. I already knew people there. I already knew how to plug into learning, and I knew enough. There were enough neighbors. But that was a big factor for me. I literally I asked around. I remember asking someone in Beitar, "How many Talmidei Chochamim live in your neighborhood?" And he wasn't sure. I was like, I don't know. Sorry.
He wasn't sure because there's so many. No, he just didn't know how to list them. No,
yeah,
I bet it's
so that was a big factor for me, and not for nothing, because again, I'm a kind of self-styled learning expert, and so I knew what to expect. So even though I didn't know how to learn, let's say, Shas, for example, right? But I knew that
you mean the Shas, you mean all of
Shas
the
Bavli.
You mean all of the Talmud, as the Babylonian Talmud, the whole thing.
Right.
So you didn't have access to learn the whole thing.
So I didn't have access, but I just finished. I just finished Me'amloes. I didn't know.
Right. You're just.
I didn't even know how. Yeah, I didn't know how to live.
And you were single. You were single at the time.
No, I got married somewhere along the way. After I started keeping mitzvot, I got married. Yeah, but
before you came to Israel.
Before I came into, but I married someone from Israel. So she came with me to Queens, and we lived in Queens for a few years, and then we came back. And that was also kind of like a trick I played on myself, that if I married an American girl, the chances are I probably would have had a hard time moving. So it was much easier to convince my Israeli wife to return to Israel than it would have been to convince my American wife. So why make accent on the Talmidei Chochamim? Because when you're learning material that is so deep and is so out of realm of normal experience as Talmud, you need all the help you can get. And I say this with, from experience. This, we're talking about events that's about 15 years ago. In that time, I'm almost finished with the Shas, and
amazing.
Hopefully before this Shavuos, we'll have a siyum of all of Shas.
Tremendous accomplishment. Yeah.
And so I had to kind of plan it, and because for me it was like a big project, because I'm a computer guy. Everything for me is projects, so in it I felt I needed to have as many experts as possible, and I was right. because the Shas is so varied. Even though I hired a teacher, and even though I was surrounded by Talmidei Chochamim, there were still moments that like no one in Beis Midrash could answer the question, and I had to go and find it somewhere else. So it helped very much that to be in an environment where you could you could ask questions, like serious questions, serious learning questions to your neighbors, and have these discussions on the street corner, or in the Makolet, whatever. Because literally, you could like spot someone in a grocery store and be like, "Hey, I'm in this sugya. I'm stuck. What do you say?" And he'll give you something right on the spot. So yeah, and that's basically from there. I just kept going. So I'm finishing Shas now. Then I'm gonna continue with the Mishnayos on both ends, right? The Zraim and the Taharas.
What you're saying, just again for those who don't know. So the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud covers not all of the different tractates. It's hard to explain, but there are certain tractates that don't have any Talmud. The Talmud is the explanation of the Mishnah, and the Mishnah is the explanation of the mitzvahs of the Torah. So you have some of the Mishnah in the Babylonian Talmud doesn't have any Talmud to elucidate it, to elaborate on it. Like, for instance, the ones that had to do only with the land of Israel, like the Zeraim, which has to do with, there's a whole Seder, there's a whole order called Zeraim, which has to do with plants and the different years, the cycle of the crops and the trees and the various gifts that are left for the poor, specifically in the land of Israel. So there's no, because the Babylonian Talmud was written outside of the land of Israel, so there's no Talmud Bavli, there's no Babylonian Talmud on those areas. And also because there was no temple at the time that the Babylonian Talmud was written, there's less laws that have to do with ritual purity and impurity were not actually relevant at the time that the Babylonian Talmud was written. So therefore, there's no elaboration from the Babylonian Talmud on almost the entire Seder Taharos, which is the order that has to do with ritual purity and impurity. So
it's interesting, actually, for those who are into numbers. There are 63 tractates in the Mishnah, and to get the number of tractates in Talmud Bavli, you just reverse the number, the 36.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
A little bit of binary language there.
Something like that. So that's basically the plan, because you really have to have a plan in order to accomplish something, especially in learning, I think. And there's no shortage of things to learn further. Obviously, there's Rambam, there's
no end.
Halacha, and what I'm doing is I'm keeping track of everything, and I have meticulous notes on every single Masechet. And I'm actually hoping to create tools that will make learning easier for others in the near future, such as dictionary, like not like the Jastro, but something more useful. Also, a way of searching Talmud that's more intelligent, like you could search by topics, for example, as opposed to just words, and many different things. Not to mention the actual write-up of all the sources on every single page, right? Because the rabbi that I hired actually wrote up for every page different Rishonim and Achronim that to look up in every single Masechet and every single daf.
This is a new project that hasn't been published yet, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Because I mean, we're just finishing the learning. So I'm gonna have to go back and start reworking it, and because I need to also I also need to repeat, right? All the Talmidei Chochamim saying that you need to review at least 60 times, right? So. So I only learned the once. That's really, I mean, granted, each one is like 3-4 times, right? Because in the course of learning, you learn every page several times. But still, that Yeah.
Okay, so you're here. So take us back to tell us the if you could tell us how did you go from that process from Me'am Loez, from reading this tremendous 20-volume work that is answering all your questions that you had that you didn't get answered in other faiths and other religions, and how does that actually turn into you deciding to take this on and live it? Because
Well,
there is a jump. There's a lot of people can make an intellectual division between what they know in the intellect and what they're actually doing.
I agree with you, but and I did have a struggle with that, but I'll be honest with you. I came to a conclusion that if I knew the stuff that has to be done, and I knew it to be true, and I didn't do it, that would have caused some kind of irreversible corruption somewhere, like in the spiritual realm. I don't know that it would have been something that's very catastrophic. I felt
Mm-hmm.
that because think about it, it's like you know the right thing to do. You're absolutely sure that it's the right thing to do. You've asked every single one of your neighbors, every single one of your cousins, whatever. You know exactly what the right thing is. And then you have a chance to do it, and you say pass. That's gonna do something to you. You know what I mean? You're not just gonna wake up next day with a hangover. You know, it's gonna have some serious repercussions. You know, so I wasn't prepared to do that. You know, and also not in the least. One of the things that Loez explains very clearly is that you cannot learn without doing. Okay, so it would have effectively meant, let's say I was ready to deal with the corruption of, whatever spiritual thing you call it. I'm trying to avoid the word soul, but, whatever it is that people have that is spiritual. Let's say you don't care, you're ready to sell it for 5 cents. That's fine. But it also means that you wouldn't be able to learn. That, believe it or not, for me was harder. Mm-hmm. Like I could maybe, like, I'm not saying like for sure, but like in theory, I could probably have an easier time dealing with corrupting my soul than not being able to learn.
Because the Ma'am Loez was telling you that you cannot continue to learn if you're not actually applying what you're learning.
Exactly.
Yeah. And obviously he showed that from sources in the Torah itself.
Right, and he had, he proves everything. I mean, he doesn't just say anything. He's got proofs that they're extremely convincing on but for every statement that he makes. That's what's amazing about it. You know what I mean? So I was stuck. I mean, there was no way I was gonna put down this learning, and at the same time, like you said, it's a big jump. But I was like, well, I don't feel like I have a choice, and obviously some parts are gradual. Like, for example, when I started out, I started keeping mitzvot, but I was like, well, there's nowhere it says that I have to wear black and white. Like, I can be a frum Yid with color shirt, But that didn't work out very well because people thought that I was light in my observance, and it just like created all sorts of problematic situations. So I was forced to wear black and white.
Okay. There are different communities, but that was the community that you were in that you wanted to associate with, and so that's
it's not. Not because of that. It's because literally, I mean, if you live in New York, right? There are so many different people there, and people look at you and they size you up. Right. So if you're black and white, they know they keep their distance. If you're wearing color, denim or whatever, then their assumption is that you're quote unquote light. And now, who cares about their assumption? Not me personally, but it, that leads to all sorts of situations that I had to kind of extricate myself from, and I really didn't cherish that experience. And I said, the black and white really is a shield of sorts. It just signals to people, hey, I'm here keeping mitzvot. Don't even bother trying to convince me to, go hang out on Shabbat, don't go hugging me if you're a girl, etc., etc. Yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah, it's just like a lot of these like unnecessary, weird situations that I would run into. Being frum and like dressing casual, exactly. So I had to kind of like, I'm a very practical person. I said, look, it's just either I need my peace and quiet. I can't have people bothering me. I can't have I can't have I can't have to explain to every single girl I meet that I don't shake hands with women, et cetera, et cetera. This just solves a lot of these problems. Let's just go with it. It's just clothing, for crying out loud.
I get it.
So eventually I got used to it. Whatever. I don't think about it anymore. But it was definitely a transition in terms of signaling, right? Because it's you kind of have to like you don't live in a desert. You live in a society, and people don't have time to do lengthy interviews with you. They kind of like size you up on the spot, and and then you have to kind of help them out. I looked at it as a sort of like a compassionate decision. I mean, like just like just to help these people out, not to get into these situations that I also wouldn't be in them, and everyone was happier. And really, that's how it happened.
Was there a community? Did you automatically know which community to attach yourself to? Was just the people around you? Like, did you find a mentor after you're convinced by Me'am Loez that this is amazing stuff? Did you attach yourself to a rebbe, a mentor, or something like that? A yeshiva?
No, yes and no. I mean, where I grew up, the closest frum community is Main Street, Kew Hills.
Mm-hmm.
So I wound up spending a lot of time there. Then I did look up night yeshiva. What was this called? Medregas Adam.
Okay.
Right. So I would go there for shiurim. But in Queens, there's not a whole lot. The Queens is not very yeshivish.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And so for me, it was I was kind of like always like sitting on my suitcases because for me it was to move from Queens to Brooklyn or Lakewood. It was equivalent to moving to Israel. So it's really
yeah. Okay.
That's that So I was just ready to do that. So I did I did whatever I had to do to learn as much as I could. But I really felt that I need this environment where I can, I go down the street here and I pass by at least 10 yeshivot, that does me good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I need that.
That's beautiful. There's nothing like it. Nothing like Jerusalem. So now, Mordechai, can you tell us how your father's a scientist, you're a data scientist now. Can you talk about, you dropped out of college, you mentioned. Can you talk about your professional development and how it was working together at the same time as your Jewish growth?
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing that probably many people don't mention, or maybe they just don't experience, I don't know, but I felt that learning Talmud enhanced my professional career tremendously.
Organize your thoughts? Explain.
Yeah, first of all, I didn't always work for someone, so I'm a little bit of an outlier. I was mostly freelancing, because it's just that's just my personality. Okay, so I had a lot more freedom with my time. Okay. And then one of the other reasons that I moved to Israel was because I still continue working with states. So my mornings effectively were free now. Okay. So I could go and sit in this Midrash in the morning, and in the evening go and work. So that made a big difference. In New York, it was a little more difficult because I would come home like 7, 8, and then I'd have to drag myself to learning until 10, and then my wife would complain she doesn't see me. So it was it was a little bit problematic, but
Easier. Okay, got it.
yes, but with the somehow managed. But here, obviously, my quality of life went up tremendously because I didn't have to learn on subway, and my office is less than half a mile from my house, and et cetera, et cetera. So, but in general, also it's very noteworthy to understand that the understanding how the Gemara works, right?
Gemara is Talmud. For those who don't know.
Yeah. Is a tremendous advancement for anyone in business. Ramchal, right? The Rav Chaim Lozato specifically says it like this. He says that every person wants to know the truth, but not all truths are equally self-evident, and therefore a person needs to have tools in order to discover, these less than obvious truths. Now, this sounds like a very simple statement, and it is, but it's very profound, because once I started learning those tools, I started noticing that my speed of comprehension just shut up tremendously.
Shut up.
Shut up, yeah. Whatever I was able to do in, let's say, 2 months, I would be able to do in 2 days, and that's in the beginning. Now it's probably down to like 5 minutes or whatever. Literally, I just came back from a job at the Bank of Israel, where all the Chachmei Chelem were trying to fix some problem for like 2 months, and they couldn't. And then I came in, and I had also an idea what the problem was or how to solve it, but I looked it up, and in 10 minutes it was solved. You know what I mean? And they thought that like I was Moshe Rabbeinu incarnate or something, but right? But really, that's the point of the method. Because there is a method to Talmud, there's a method to learning, and it's applicable to every possible exploration that a person
did you
may
tell
need
them
to.
If you want to be, I'm not so smart. For 15 years I've been learning Talmud, and the Talmud sharpens your mind. And if you guys want to be smart and you want to figure out your problems without paying an expensive freelancer like me, then learn Talmud.
I will eventually tell them.
Okay. Tell them Sugya said it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So that's the sharpening, as you call it, and of course there are things they're slightly less obvious. Like, for example, there are the 3 Masechtot which are called Masechtot Afla, right? Which is Nedarim, Shavuot, and what's the third one? I forget. Nazir, thank you. Yeah. So these are concerned themselves with speech, and what people say, what the people mean, etc. Do you know what that did for my marketing? It was unbelievable. I mean, if you really want to learn marketing, you learn those 3 Masechtot.
Wow, this I never heard before.
Exactly. That's why, because it teaches you what the general understanding of terms is. It teaches you how to figure out what the Kalal understands.
But how people understand
Yeah,
ideas and
yeah,
speech and
yeah, and how
language.
exactly, and how to process that so that you can actually communicate to on a mass level. Because like right now, I can communicate with you because we have an hour to discuss things, and that's fantastic. But if I want to attract people on LinkedIn to something, what am I going to say? How am I going to phrase something that's going to be considered as an attractive offering? So these Masechtot explain. This is what people think. When you say this, they really hear that. When you say that, they really hear that.
Mhm.
And it gives you like rules for understanding how you can iterate and how you can test different approaches. So that was an amazing advancement for me in terms of marketing, because I come from more from an engineering background, and it's always a challenge, to market things properly.
Did you ever
But
consider taking these principles and putting them into a business book?
Probably, I have so many things on my list.
Okay.
Yeah, so, yes, because I really want to I really want to make sure I get to a point where I can provide every person that wants an ability to learn all of Talmud
Mhm.
from A to Z, because really there's no such thing right now. It's like, I mean, you can in theory, but in practice, it can feel overwhelmingly difficult, especially if you don't live in a very frum area, or even if you live in a very frum area but you're not necessarily surrounded by Talmidei Chochamim. It can be extremely challenging, and yeah, I really want to make sure that I break down those barriers for everyone, so that they can easily grasp that. I think that's not a pipe dream. I think it's very possible.
Wow. So that you would say is your overarching goal that you want to accomplish with your technical know-how and your love for learning.
Well,
That's really a life project.
it's a goal for now, because my goal really is to share. It's like when Moshe Rabbeinu was on talking to Hashem in the clouds, and something happened on the ground. Hashem told him, go get down. I didn't invite you here because we're friends. I invited you here for Am Israel. All of our learning is for Am Israel. It's not our personal property. So if I manage to learn, I have an obligation to teach. I mean, it's otherwise my learning is going to disappear. I mean, it's because it's just the way it works. Yeah. So yeah. So I mean, Baruch Hashem, I have because of my ability to think faster and deeper, I learned a tremendous amount in terms of technology, in terms of programming, in terms of data. And I'm able to do projects in a fraction of time that most people are, and I'm able to train my employees to do the same. So yes, I mean, that's wonderful. But I also have an obligation to share whatever it is that I learn, because if I keep it to myself, then it will disappear.
Mhm.
That's
It'll disappear because you'll forget it in a sort of you only have. Are you saying that you only have this gift of understanding it? You understand that you were only given the gift of a quick mind to understand it in order that you should be able to teach it to others. Am I getting it right?
I don't know if it's only in order, but it's definitely not possible without. You know what I mean? Like it's because the Torah belongs to all of Am Israel, right? Torah tziva lanu morasha keilat Yaakov, right? It's everyone's property. It's not my personal property. So as long as I don't uh, make it mine, in terms of like withholding it from others,
Mhm.
then I can use it. There's no problem, but I can only use it if I make an effort to teach it. I mean, there's no problem with me using it personally, right? So like, I'm not going to say, well, I cannot think fast for you, sir, because that would be misappropriation of my Torah knowledge, No, that's fine. But I also cannot say, well, I know I learned it, but, so let someone else learn just like I learned it. What no one helped me. So, let them break their own head. I don't need to waste my time on that. I mean, so that's also not, it's impossible.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of have to make sure that you're allowed to use it. You're allowed to enjoy it, but you have to make sure that you share it, right? Because it's not ours personally.
Beautiful. So, Mordechai, can you tell us more of the details of how you set yourself up for work and what you're doing with BitWise? And what is BitWise?
BitWise is a data consulting company.
Mm-hmm.
I set it up about 16 years ago.
Before coming to Israel?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It employs about 5 people right now. Our staff levels vary. We've had as many as 15. We've had as few as 2, but I think we're comfortable now at 5. And of course, looking to expand, etc. But we're okay now. And I do most of the marketing, even though I have a marketing director, but I kind of produce most of the content and stuff like that because, again, I studied Nazir. And
you have YouTube content, right? I noticed.
Yes, I have YouTube content. I make videos. I host events for CTOs where we discuss different things.
Zoom events that are international or local or Israel events.
All of my clients are in States.
Okay.
I live in Israel, but I do business in States. And so I have
Do you go back to the States to run a seminar or no?
No, I don't have to.
You don't have to. Okay.
No, I don't like travel. I'm traveled out. When I was younger, I crisscrossed the kind of states. I visited, probably at least, 10, 20 cities in all over the states.
That was during your research into all these religions?
Yeah.
Okay. And you probably went to other countries as well. You're going to find.
No, this was from work. This was from work.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because it wasn't just for research. When you're building data centers and stuff, they send you constantly different cities to build a new one here, build a new one there, and as a consultant, I would get flown to different places. I used to live out of a suitcase for a while. I traveled all I traveled enough. But anyway, yeah. So that's so I run everything from this little place. The room we're sitting. I don't even have people coming here. They all work from home. I spend a lot of time with my family. I work technically around the clock. From like 8 a.m. to like 12 a.m. But really, I spend a lot of time on myself. I set apart a couple hours for learning. I always have lunch at home. Hang out with kids in the evening, whatever. So
how do you call that? Why do you call that working? It just means that you're available if someone needs you?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So it's like people can call me up and schedule something, or on a one-time basis. I may not be available one evening. You know what I mean? Like so whatever. So but I keep track. So I don't let myself get sucked in. So like if let's say I had meetings 2 evenings in a row, then third evening I will block out and I'll say no. So enough is enough.
Okay.
So because I spend a lot of time on learning marketing and sales, and because I can get my own clients, and then I don't depend so much on others, and I have much more freedom in terms of what to do with my time. which for me is extremely important, because I think at the end of the day, my kids are not going to remember that I bought a Ferrari. That they're going to remember that we hung out and played guitar in Motzei Shabbos.
Right. So
So
tell us. Let's go back to BitWise. So you built BitWise in the U.S. and to be a data consultant.
yeah.
Okay. So you're helping people who don't understand their data or don't want to build up the data in a way that will help them to accomplish their professional goals, their company's
No,
goals. No?
the people that contract me are generally CTOs, the Chief Technology Officers.
Hmm.
So usually they can do something close enough to what I do. I mean, I'm a specialist, the deep specialist. So obviously, they're always going to be a couple of steps behind me, but still, they understand what it is that I do, and they understand the need for it, which saves me a lot of trouble in explaining, because it's kind of an abstract area of computing, and
If you explain it to me, I would need a lot of time to understand it. That's what you're saying. Okay.
I don't know. I mean, but
All CTOs who are listening, well, they understand much better. Okay.
right. So basically, what do they need help with? They need help with setting up databases.
Hmm.
They need help managing these databases. They need help setting up data models. Because in data we have this thing called representation. Like if you ever renewed your license in DMV, that they have you in a computer. You don't sit in the computer. It's a representation of a person that is stored in a computer. You know what I mean? And and so there's it may sound a little bit like philosophy 101.
Somebody had to
Tachlis,
think about it at some point in order for it to be what we have
exactly.
today.
Yeah. So I am that somebody.
Okay. You're
Yeah.
you're thinking about it now, so that what we have in 10 years or 20 years
Right.
is going to
And
be.
then when something goes wrong, that they come to me and they ask me to fix it, because
Mhm.
the things invariably go wrong, right? It's like I remember my wife used to get very nervous when she heard that I had problems at work. Until I finally explained to her that if we didn't have problems, they wouldn't pay us. So then she became enthusiastic about problems.
Ah, we're looking for problems.
Now she likes problems.
Your LinkedIn tagline can be Mordechai Danielov looking for trouble.
Looking for
No,
trouble.
maybe not.
It finds me. It finds me naturally. Yep.
Very
So
good.
yeah.
Okay,
So
so
that's
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 what you're
that's
doing.
that's BitWise. Yeah.
That's BitWise, and that's what you're doing. Okay, very good. So this is something that so I think I'm getting the full picture. I mean, of course, not the full picture because it's only an hour conversation, but I think I understand a lot. I understand you a lot better, and I would ask like this to, in conclusion, and this can take as long as you want to answer. There's a lot of our audience, our students listening to this, our students of the podcast fellowship. They're listening to, they're encountering Torah for the first time on a mature level sometimes. And I mean, sometimes for them it's the first time on a mature level. And they're listening to Shirim, they're discussing them, and they're trying, encountering what the Torah has to do with modernity and life as we know it. So, as somebody who went through a journey and built something up for himself in Judaism, like what message would you like to give to any young Jew out there encountering Judaism? What wisdom can you share?
I think the biggest thing to keep in mind is to stay practical. Like you're saying, like, well, what's the relevance? The relevance is in every day. That's why I would suggest to start with Me'am lawyers, and just the questions that he asks already open up your mind and allow you to ask those questions in your day-to-day environment. Because this type of thinking is so rare in our society that any person that is capable of asking good questions will certainly be number one in their environment, whatever work they choose to go into. There's absolutely no question about it. And because I've seen that, time after time, especially in like even in Israel, there's a huge discrimination against Haredim. Like all the techies here, the secular techies look at us and like as like those poor people. So it's always so much fun for me to go into their meetings, and they're like, oh, so look who showed up, and then like I start asking questions, and they're like, whoa, why didn't we think of those questions? You know what I mean? Where'd you come up with that? I mean, and that's really what the differentiation is about. It's like they say different languages have a lot of words for a particularly important concept. Like Eskimos have like hundreds of words for snow. In Jewish language, we have lots of synonyms for a question. Mm-hmm. Questioning really is very important. And that's knowing how to question things properly. Not just like James Dean type of like, rebel without a cause, whatever, but like really questioning with a purpose, with with the ability to follow through, with the ability to logically reason. I think that in of itself is going to set everyone so apart, be it in college or be it in work environment, that they're gonna feel the wings. I mean, because really, that's what happened to me. Like when I started asking like better questions, and I started getting like looking at the feedback of people, and everyone was like, "Whoa, amazing! How do you do that? Where'd you get that?" And I'm like, I know, I'm not gonna tell you. But you can bet that they gave me even more motivation to learn, because at the end of the day, you need motivation for everything. You cannot force yourself to do anything. So you need to motivate yourself, and the way to motivate yourself is to see results. In the real world, there's no getting around it. And the biggest differentiator that we can see is, at least in the beginning, is asking questions. So we learn how to ask questions, and that will make us many times more successful. Much more than any college degree that can make you.
Mordechai, thank you so much for giving us your time. I learned a ton. And I think our audience will also. Yeah, thank you. And you should have only success. I'm looking forward to hearing about your projects, about facilitating learning of the Talmud and retention. And it sounds very exciting. Okay. Very good. Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
You've just listened to another great episode of OurTribe, the podcast, brought to you by the Podcast Fellowship and hosted by Rabbi Yaakov Culi. Tune in each week every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time to hear more great episodes of OurTribe, the podcast. If you have any suggestions or questions, email us at ourtribe@podcastfellowship.org. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to help the tribe thrive.